Hey guys, have you ever heard someone say that they bought a course, they learned it, but they can't get it to work? I mean, I've been in this business since 1999, and it seems to be a common problem. I bought this thing, and it just didn't work for me, so I just don't know what to do. The problem is, a lot of people, when they buy courses, they read through the course and they assume that they know it. They assume that they learned it. They assume that they have the experience to do what is needed. Now, I will say that some courses just really don't cut the mustard. They really just don't teach you what you need to know. And, if you go through the course and everything works out fine, then you'll probably have good results immediately. But what if something goes wrong? Let me give you an example of that. I remember when my kids were 12 and 14 years old, and they would always get angry with me because they'd always want to stay home by themselves. They'd always want to be at the house. Hey, Dad, I'm old enough to stay home by myself. I'm old enough for this. I don't need to go. I don't need to have anybody watch me. I can stay home for a couple days by myself. And this is like when I was going to speak at an event or something like that. I'm old enough to do it. It's okay. And they're right. As long as everything is going good and nothing goes wrong, they would have probably been just fine being home alone. But what if something went wrong? Would they know what to do if the hot water heater busted, for example, and flooded the entire house? Would they know what to do if there was a fire? Would they know what to do if a storm came and a tree fell on the house? Would they know what to do if someone came to the door that they didn't recognize and knocked on the door? You see, everything is easy to outline. Everything is easy to model as long as things are going right. But it's when things start going wrong. For example, like if you're a 12-year-old child at home by yourself and things start to go wrong, what happens then? Now, if you watch movies, one of the things that you have probably seen is that people rise to the occasion. And yes, that can happen. That can happen where somebody rises to the occasion and it excels beyond all expectations and all odds. But the chances of that happening are pretty small because normally what happens is people rise to the level of their highest mastery of training, not to the occasion. And if the occasion is far above and beyond where their mastery level of training is, or at least their proficient level of training is, then they can often fail significantly. And that's what happens with courses. That's what happens with kids at home. That's what happens in a lot of aspects of people's lives. That nobody takes the time to learn how to troubleshoot, to learn how to fix things, to come up with a contingency plan. Now, just because you bought a course doesn't mean you learned anything. You could have gone through the course, finished the book, felt really good about it, but you didn't learn a thing at all. What you did is you acquired some knowledge, you became familiar with concepts, you became familiar with possibly some theories. You didn't learn it. The learning doesn't come without experience. The learning doesn't come without practice. The learning doesn't come without failing to some extent and having to troubleshoot and find out what went wrong and say, oh, well, if I just change this, this will happen. I have that with my students sometimes as well, is I showed them how to do something. For example, my repeat profit systems process. I showed them how to do the repeat profit systems process. They bring me back what they put together, and it's completely different than what I taught them in the course. And that's because what they've done is they've attached their own belief systems, their own paradigms, their own information, stuff from other people into the system instead of simply following the instructions. And that's something I used to tell my kids when they were young and they hated me for it, but now to some extent they appreciated it. It is, if you just follow the simple instructions, at the very least you get what we can often call a predictable type of an outcome. But if you don't follow any instructions, the more that you don't, let's say that there's 12 steps in a process, and with each step, you veer from the instructions just a little bit based on your own paradigms, your own belief systems, your own prejudices, for example. By the time you get to step 12, how far are you away from what was actually intended to be taught and what was intended to be shared in that training? So think about this next time you take a course, next time a student comes to you complaining that, hey, I just can't figure this out. Did they follow the instructions? Did they veer from the course? Did they learn how to troubleshoot? Do you teach them how to troubleshoot in the course? Do you teach them that, hey, if you do this, this may happen. These are the 5 things I had to go up against, and here's how I solved each one of those problems. So if you follow this step in your practice, let's call it a practice. If you follow these steps in your practice and you come up against problem number 1, here's some ideas of how to solve it. Problem number 2, here's some ideas of how to solve it. Do you teach people how to actually solve the problems within your system, or do you just try to teach them the system and say, best of luck, have a good day, and walk away? It's just like 12-year-old child. If you teach your 12-year-old child the things that they need to know in order to be at home alone for 1 to 5 hours at a time, then they're going to have an opportunity to be a lot more successful than if you just walk out the door and leave them there by themselves to fend for themselves and to rise to their highest level of training. Because if their highest level of training is nothing, what do you think you can expect when the water heater busts? So think about this in terms of your funnels, your sales messages, your copy, everything else. What happens when things go wrong? Do you panic? Do you know how to troubleshoot it? If you know how to troubleshoot it and you know how to figure things out, that comes with experience, and experience generally comes with time. Time in the business, time in the industry, time with the things that you want to learn how to do. So I hope this is helpful. Talk to you later.